I have processed 11,400 and some intakes in 19 years on the Syndrel customs line, and I want that number understood before I explain what happened on the transit cutter oven, because it is the only way to make clear that what I am reporting is not an anomaly. It is a hole that has been there the entire time, under every number I have ever filed, and none of us saw it until a stowaway named Wren sat across from me in a holding bay and simply declined to go under. The intake was routine. A human, mid-30s by their own reckoning, caught riding the coolant manifold of a bulk freighter with false transit papers, and a face that suggested she had expected to be caught eventually and had made a kind of peace with the timing. My duty is simple on transit legs like this: confirm identity, administer calma to bring the subject to a cooperative baseline, and deliver them undamaged and unagitated to the tribunal dock at the far end of the run. Calma has been standard processing protocol across the Syndrel Authority for longer than I have been alive. It works on every species we have ever logged. It is not a punishment. It is a courtesy, if you want to know the truth. A way to move a frightened, resistant creature through a frightening process without anyone getting hurt. I administered the first dose at intake plus 4 minutes, standard measure, into the inhalation port of the holding bay. Wren breathed it in without complaint, the way most of them do. Once they understand fighting the air itself is pointless. I watched the readout climb toward baseline compliance, the way it always does. And then I watched it not arrive. I want to be precise about what I mean by that, because not arrive undersells it. The drug metabolized. My equipment confirmed uptake, confirmed distribution, confirmed the compound moving through her bloodstream exactly on the timeline the manufacturer promises. Every number on my board said calma was doing its job. Wren, meanwhile, was sitting on the holding bench with her knees pulled up, watching me work with an expression I can only describe as patient. Not sedated patient, ordinary patient. The patience of someone waiting for a cue to move. "You're doing the thing again," she said, when she caught me checking the readout a third time. "The dose. I can feel it go in. Little warm, tastes like burnt sugar. Then it's just gone." Sorry, I did not answer her, because protocol does not require me to converse with subjects, and because I did not yet have anything useful to say. I administered a second dose at the 11-minute mark, double the standard measure, well within safety tolerance for a creature her size. The uptake curve on my board was, if anything, faster the second time, and still nothing changed in the bay. She rubbed her eyes once, the way a tired person does at the end of a long shift, and asked if there was anywhere to lie down that wasn't the floor. I have seen resistant subjects before. I have seen species whose biochemistry fights calma for a few extra minutes before folding, species who need a third dose, species who need to be walked through the process slowly because their metabolism runs cold and sluggish and takes its time catching up. Those are the intakes we train for. We have a whole module on them, a chart of adjusted dosages by mass and body temperature, a checklist for the rare subject who needs to be talked down instead of gassed down. None of it applied here, and I kept reaching for it anyway, the way you keep pressing a switch after the room has already told you the power is out. What I had never seen, in 19 years, was a subject whose body accepted the drug perfectly and simply finished processing it before it could do anything at all. I pulled the pharmacological reference while she waited, patient as furniture, and did the arithmetic myself, instead of trusting the summary line, because I did not want to believe the summary line. Calma works by lingering. That is the entire design. It does not knock a creature out. It settles into the bloodstream and sits there for the better part of an hour, gently damping whatever the nervous system is trying to do, long enough that resistance simply becomes exhausting and cooperation becomes the easier choice. The active window, across every species we process, runs somewhere between 40 and 90 minutes. I checked the metabolic clearance rate the manufacturer had on file for humans, buried 3 tables deep in a reference nobody on this route had ever had reason to open, because we had never needed it. Humans clear the compound in under 6 minutes. 6 minutes. The drug does not get a chance to work. It is not that Wren resisted it, or endured it, or fought through it the way the mythology back home likes to tell it about difficult intakes. She did not experience calma as an obstacle at all. Her body simply processed it and moved on, the way you might process a sip of water, before the drug had finished announcing itself to her nervous system. I gave her a third dose at the 20-minute mark, out of what I will admit now was not procedure, but a kind of disbelief that needed to be argued with, and watched the exact same curve rise and vanish. 6 minutes flat, no residue, no drag, no softening at the edges of her attention at all. "Is this bad?" Ren asked, at some point during the third dose, and I understood she meant for me, not for her. She had guessed, correctly, that she was not the one in the room with a problem. No, I did not answer that either. I sat with the readouts, and did the math I did not want to do, the math that is not about one stowaway at all. Calma is not a weapon. It has never needed to be one, because it has never once failed. It is the reason a two-person customs crew can safely process violent offenders without restraints. The reason our holding bays have no bars. The reason a species-wide processing doctrine built across 400 years of interstellar law assumes that any creature brought within range of the gas can be brought, gently and without incident, into a state where it will not fight, will not run, will not do anything at all except sit and wait to be told what happens next. Every transport in the Syndrol fleet runs on that assumption. Every quiet cell, every unarmed customs officer, working a night shift alone, with a subject twice their mass, trusting a canister on the wall instead of a weapon on their hip, because the canister has never once needed backup. It was not that the drug failed on Ren. Failure implies a fight, a contest, a moment where the compound tried and lost. This was not a contest. Her body was simply too fast for the argument to happen at all, the way a door that has already closed cannot be said to have lost a race against the wind. I found myself, absurdly, almost admiring the cleanliness of it. There was no drama in her blood, no resistance to overcome, because there was nothing there long enough to resist. A metabolism that clears a sedative in under 6 minutes does not belong to one stowaway on one coolant manifold. It belongs to every human who has ever passed through a Syndrol processing line unremarked, docile-looking, cooperative-seeming, filed under, responded normally to standard measure, by officers who, like me, until 11 minutes ago, had no reason to check the clearance rate against the 6-minute mark, because nobody had ever needed to look that closely at a species that always seemed so easy to move through the line. I filed the incident as a Category 1 processing anomaly, which is the honest word for it, though I know already what the honest word will become once someone above my pay grade reads it. A structural failure in every unarmed room we have ever built around this species. I did not restrain Ren. There was, I discovered when I checked, no restraint hardware rated for humans stocked anywhere on the oven, because none had ever been requisitioned. Nobody had ever needed it. She sat on the holding bench for the rest of the run, patient, faintly apologetic about the trouble she seemed to sense she was causing, and asked once, gently, whether I was going to be in trouble for this. I told her I did not know yet. That was true. What I did know, by the time the tribunal dock lights came up through the forward port, was smaller and colder than trouble, and harder to file. That the leash we had been using on her species for 400 years had never actually been attached to anything. It had simply never been pulled hard enough, by anyone, for us to notice it had come loose. We would need doors now, real ones, with real locks, in every room where a human might ever sit and wait. I wrote that recommendation into the report myself, in the driest language I had, because it was the only way I knew to say, without saying it, that the quiet ones had never needed the gas at all.